Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to episode 3 of season 1 of my top 10 videos. These videos are supported through my Patreon campaign and my Patreon supporters vote each time on what games are going to be covered. I'm going to be doing these videos every few months. This is episode 3 as I mentioned, and this is going to be on deck building games. So what I do is I put a poll out to all of my Patreon supporters, they vote on what their favourite deck building games are, and then I get together with a special guest and we go through the top 10 of them. This time I'm joined by Mike Fitzgerald, who'll be joining me later. And one of the things we're going to be discussing at the start is what is a deck building game? Because it's not very clear at all. I know you've probably got your own opinions, and I know some of the games that we're going to talk about here, you probably don't feel should be on this list. But as I say, I made it very, very open, and I just decided to say, if you want to class a game as a deck building game, then that's completely up to you. So if you like this video, please obviously click the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, check out some of the other videos that I do. But also, as I mentioned, this video is only made possible thanks to the support of my Patreon campaign. So if you are in a position to be able to support me and help support the channel and help me carry on making videos, then please check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/gaming rules. But let's head on over and say hello to Mike. So a very warm welcome to Mr. Mike Fitzgerald. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon. Well, no, it's good morning for me.
Good morning for you, yes. Thank you for getting up very early for joining me today. And for those people who don't know you, just a little introduction about who you are.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I've been game industry since 1993 when I designed Wyvern, the early trading card game. And I did a lot of trading card games, 3 or 4, one of them not published, but then I went off, and then I got smart and went off to regular games once the trading card game craze had calmed down.
Calmed down rather than fizzled out, because it's still going strong. But
it is in 2 cases, yes. There are only 2 that are successful, but they're very successful.
Yes.
Pokemon and Magic the Gathering are both very successful.
Yeah.
So, but people are still trying new ideas with that. And I guess I'm best known for maybe the Mystery Rummy series, which started in 1996. It's still for sale. Baseball Highlights 2045, which is a deck builder of sorts, and so that's appropriate for this discussion. And that started a sports line. So I did football highlights, and I'm currently working on basketball. There's some
I didn't know that. Right,
hasn't been talked about, but it's in beta version now, being tested, and it's so far so good. We'll see how we do. And that's a dice game. That's a dice build. It's a dice builder, do you call it, or a bag builder?
Well,
what do you call it when you're
that actually opens up the first topic that we're going to talk about today.
Okay,
is what is a deck builder? So before. Because we've talked about doing this probably for about 4 months, and one of the reasons for the delays is when I first decided that this was going to be the subject of this top 10 video, I wanted to give people parameters and say, this is what I'm classing as a deck building game. This is what I want you to vote on. Okay. But I didn't feel confident in setting those boundaries myself. So what I did, I spoke to people on the Gaming Rules Slack channel, on Facebook groups, and on my BGG guild. And I said, I'm going to be doing a top 10 video on deck building games. What should I put as the parameters? And the results were absolutely overwhelming. And it became clear that everybody has a different view on what a deck builder is. There are some people that were saying a certain game was definitely a deck builder. And then there were other people saying that is no way a deck builder in any way, shape or form. So what I've decided to do for this top 10 video is set absolutely no parameters whatsoever. When I put the vote out to the Patreon supporters, I said, what is your favorite deck building game? And whatever you think is a deck building game is a deck building game. However, the only caveat that I did say is any game where you have to construct your deck before you turn up for the game and it doesn't really change during the game, for example, collectible card games, we're not talking about that today. We're not talking about Magic the Gathering where you build your deck beforehand, you play a game and then you go away and you build it, you rebuild it after game. So we're definitely not talking about them. But other than that, we're covering everything today. Now, I've got my own views on what a deck building game is. You've got your own views?
Yes, I do.
but for today,
I think you chose the best way to do it.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just mired in a mess. And I do think, I can understand why everyone has picked these games, because there's an element of the game,
yes,
that uses what we have come to know as deck building, I suppose.
Yeah. But there are definitely some on this list that you don't think should be on the list.
Yes, there's some I wouldn't put on my top 10, maybe, but hey, to each his own.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through them, starting with number 10 and then moving forward. And at the end, Mike's going to give us a game which he thought should have been on this top 10 list. That will come at the end. Right, okay, so number 10 on the top 10 gaming rules, deck building games, is one that isn't a surprise to me that's on there, and that is Star Realms. Published by White Wizard Games, designed by Robert Doherty and Darwin Castle. Originally released in 2014, the game is still going strong. I've lost track of how many expansions there are for this game. So your thoughts on Star Realms, Mike?
Well, I think Star Realms is great. It's addictive. I think, sometimes I get a little angry at it because I grab my iPad to play one, and then 10 games later, I'm still playing. I think it's an example of one of those games where the app outperforms the card game.
Yeah.
I do like Star Realms. I like the combination, how it works, how the cards influence each other, the different modes and stuff. If you have the same faction, so to speak, it'll trigger something. So it's very quick and easy. It's a get your health down to zero kind of thing, or the opponent down to zero. And boy, they have made the most of it, haven't they? And then Hero Realms, which is a relative of that game, but that's a I don't know how they do that. They make it so addictive on that app.
Yeah.
But yes, I think it's very successful deck builder, and I enjoy playing it.
So I've never played the physical game, but I have the app, and I've played it a lot on the app, and I absolutely agree with you about the addictiveness. How long does it take to set up and play a 2-player game of Star Realms physical?
Not long at all.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty quick. As most of these, you need the pile of the thing you can always get.
Yep.
It's off to the side, the Explorer, I guess it is. And then you set out your row and you have a starting hand, 5 minutes. For
a full game of it?
Yeah. The setup.
Yeah. What about a full game? If we were to play Star Realms now, 5 minutes to set up, but how long would it take to play the game?
15,
10.
Whereas 10 to 15 minutes.
On the app, it's a minute, 2 minutes. I tell you what, it feels like that, and it
does, doesn't it?
I've done the same thing with the app. I'm like, I'll just play another game, and then you go. Suddenly, you've played 10 games, and a friend of mine from years ago used to say, well, he probably still does, that a quick game is a good game. Now, I actually disagree with that statement because I've played a lot of quick games that I didn't think were good games. I don't think a game is good because it's quick, but I will agree that Star Realms being quick, if it was any longer, I think it would be potentially less popular. If Star Realms was an hour and a half game for 2 players, I don't think it would work.
No, I agree. I mean, again, if it was as easy for a designer as just making quick games, that would be easy, right? I mean, that would cut this down to 5 minutes a game or whatever.
Yeah.
So each game, as you're developing it, has a sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to watch testers and watch people to sort of see where that is. And you can tell if you're watching videos of playtests and stuff when your game is overstayed its welcome.
Right.
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So I've designed a couple things. Oh, this is great. This is epic. This is my Through the Ages or whatever. It's going to be fantastic. But then in testing, it'll just, is this still game going? What are we still playing for? That kind of thing. So, it's true. But Star Realms, so when a game hits a sweet spot, then it has a chance to really do well, whatever it is.
So I have opinions on Star Realms which are not popular opinions. I personally don't like the game. I don't think it's a very good game. And I've played the app about 100 times. Now, how have I played the app 100 times if I don't think it's a good game? It's because it's addictive.
Yes.
It's quick, but also because Star Realms is super popular, I have played the app to death because I think I'm wrong. Everybody else seems to like Star Realms. So what am I missing? What is it? And by repeatedly playing it over and over again, I was hoping that I would get to the stage where I go, I get it now. But Star Realms for me, and I'm probably going to talk about this a few times during this during this episode, is for me any kind of deck building game where you have to play all and you have no choice of what cards to keep between one round and the next means, and then you shuffle your deck and everything else. It's about getting those combos, and whether you get those combos or not is. You can adjust the probability by buying the right cards and thinning your deck, but ultimately, and this is the case with a lot of the games that we're going to talk about today, whether you get those combos can be down to luck of the draw as to whether you get them at the right time.
Of course. Now, Star Realms to me is a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
And it's a quick, fast roller coaster ride. Mm-hmm. And I will build the deck as I go, keeping the combos in mind. But I really never expect to get them perfectly. Right. I just don't do that. Now, others games will allow you to hold a card back. So I think for you, and knowing your tastes in games in general, the kind of randomness that Star Realms has might be just a little too much.
It is
for your brain.
Yeah.
Because your brain would like to have some control in making those combos happen.
And here's the other thing. Because I played the app a lot, I was finding that obviously when I started playing it, I didn't really know what I was doing and what cards to buy. And then I got an idea of kind of what I was doing. But I would play one game on the app and I would absolutely annihilate my opponent. Okay, with a certain level of AI, I would absolutely annihilate them. I'd get the right cards, I'd get them early, I'd get the combos off and I'd fire and I'd win easily. And I'd still have like 25 health left. And then the next game against the same AI, I'd just get a series of unlucky draws and then I'd die and I'm having dealt only 10 damage to my opponent. And I think that is where I ended up with stopping playing in the end, is that whilst I felt I was making decisions in the game about what cards to buy, there was such a wide margin of whether you win or you lose based on whether the combos fire off or not, that it was skewing the game, a lot. So
it's swingy. I guess you'd call it swingy and stuff. Whereas for me, it's one of those games for me, it's a plus that I can play with anybody and anybody can win.
That's true.
And I just like those kind of things. I mean, there's a space in my gaming for those kind of games.
Yeah.
And Star Realms is certainly one.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's good to see that it's still doing well, and maybe I'll go back to the app again, play it another 100 times.
Or you could try Hero Realms, which has a little bit more meat to it.
See, I knew Hero Realms was a fantasy version of Star Realms, but I didn't look into it beyond that. So are you saying it's got more to it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's got campaigns. It's got a little storyline. It doesn't solve your basic problem.
Right. Okay. So moving on to number 9 is a game from 2011, which a lot of people are going to argue should not be on this list, but it is Mage Knight. Designed by Vlaada Chvátil, published by WizKids Games, had a few expansions. Although I heard the latter 2 expansions, some guy designed them and then WizKids released a big box edition, the Ultimate Edition, in 2018. Now, Mage Knight, as I say, some people will argue that it is not a deck building game, and it is not a deck building game as such, but deck building is a key part of the game, and enough people voted on it that it made it onto this list. Now, Mage Knight is my number 1 favourite game of all time. So, my opinion on this is biased. Mike, have you ever got a chance to play Mage Knight?
Yes, I have. What a brilliant design. I mean, that's all I can say. That's the game that made me understand what Vlaada can do.
Right.
He's a magician.
Yeah.
He's just amazing. The way that game builds. Now, I played it solo right from the start.
Yep.
and really enjoyed it. And then I found a couple friends who were willing to, learn. So I played it for a little while. The problem for me, it's long and it's hard.
It is, yeah. Both
and
of
long
those,
and hard are two qualities that don't sit well for me over a period of time.
Yeah.
But it's such a brilliant design. I'm trying to find that big box version,
right,
and find a reasonable way to get that without being swindled or something. But it's just an amazing design. It's a lot of game.
Yeah.
And I usually don't like that, having to think so much to do a couple things, like move across a field.
Yeah. All I want to do is walk through the forest. Oh, well, you can't. You've got to play this card, and then you've got to do that, and then you've got to...
That's right. But this game, it all sort of makes sense, and it all... It's a real enjoyable experience, but you got to have the time.
Yeah.
And I got to be in the mood,
Yeah.
Okay, let's sit down and do that. But I think as far as deck building goes, no, it's not a deck builder, but... No. That is a key. It's a relatively key part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And using your resources right and that kind of stuff. So yeah. I'm glad to see it here. Actually,
a lot of deck building games, you will be reshuffling your deck many, many times during the game. As soon as it empties, you'll reshuffle it. In Mage Knight, once your deck is empty, that is the end of the day for you. And you will only go through your deck once during each round of the game. And there's only like 4 or 6 rounds in the whole game. But one of the things that I loved about Mage Knight is, unlike a lot of other deck builders where when you buy a card, it goes to your discard pile, and then it will get shuffled in and you'll get it eventually. In Mage Knight, when you acquire a new card, it goes on your deck, which means...
that's I did borrow that for Baseball Highlights.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where it came from.
Oh, right. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Well, and it made sense for baseball, I thought. You got the guy coming up next. So.
Yeah. It just, because you've put all of that effort in, you've bought the card, you want to see it again. Right. And I know there's other deck builders that have gone one step further. That when you buy a card, it goes straight into your hand, and you're like, oh right, I can definitely use it straight away. So Mage Knight, I'm glad it's on this list, but I know a lot of people won't class it as a deck builder, but it has a deck building element to it. Probably not as Mike says, it's an important part of the game, but it's not a big part of the game. It's probably like 5% of the game, if that. But
the time you spend,
Moving on to number 8, and this is Thunderstone, or Thunderstone Advance, or Thunderstone Quest, because I got votes on all of them. So what I've done is I've combined all of the votes for Thunderstone together, rightly or wrongly, and put them all here. Because Thunderstone originally came out in 2009, designed by Mike Elliott. Then there was Thunderstone Advance in 2013, which I believe improved on a number of things. And then in 2018, Thunderstone Quest came out, which I've got the big box of it. The designers of that are credited as Mike Elliott, Brian Rees and Mark Wootton. So I think they took the original game, they've developed it, and I think Thunderstone Quest, is the best version of Thunderstone that there's been. And I remember when the original game came out, so this was 2013, and we played it, and it was like, oh, it's Dominion, because we haven't mentioned Dominion yet, but it's Dominion, but there's actually a point to me building my deck. I'm actually going down a dungeon, and I'm battling monsters and everything else. So it might have been the first deck building game that I played where there was actually a pure sort of deck builder, where there was actually a point. 2009, where there was a point to it. So Thunderstone Quest or Thunderstone, Mike?
Well, Thunderstone Quest is the one that it's funny because I know Mike Elliott pretty well, and he told me, because I had played the others, and he told me, this is the one, so get it.
Right.
So I got it, and all I'll say is the box is way too heavy.
Oh, it is.
I mean, it's
huge.
The box is as big as my house.
Yep.
And it's impossible to lift.
Yeah. It's just full of cards.
And there's so many cards.
Mm-hmm.
And setup is such a bear.
Yeah.
So there's this game and one other that's coming up. I won't spoil the name yet, but those 2 games I was playing about the same time. And I was trying to leave them both set up so I could get back to it quickly, without having to do all the setup, and I found I need a new house.
Right.
I had 2 tables set up, and there was no place to eat. There was no place to do anything else. So that's when I began to realize, set up, the footprint and the time it takes are elements of the game.
Right. Yeah.
And so you want a game that pays you off at some level for the time spent for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I really enjoyed a lot of Thunderstone Quest, but I haven't followed. They have Kickstarter after Kickstarter. I got to stop at some point. I just don't have room for anything more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But it's it's one of Mike's best. I mean, he, by the way, is the person who's designed more trading card games than anyone on the planet.
Yeah.
When you take his Asian ones into account.
Yeah.
Like Dual Masters, I think is the big one, but there's several others that he's done also.
Yeah.
And he was on my team for 2 of my trading card games with Wizard of the Coast, Nitro and X-Men.
Right.
So those 2, he was on my team, and that's where we got to know each other pretty well.
I actually bumped into Mike at one of these evening get-togethers in Essen one year. It was about 3 years ago, I think. And we just found ourselves, stood next to each other and we were chatting. And everybody else had wandered off and left us to it. And we probably chatted for about an hour. Now, I'd never met him before. I knew of him, and I used to play Magic the Gathering a lot myself. But suddenly I got Mike's life story about all this time in Japan. And it was fascinating. There was so much there that I wasn't aware of about what he'd done in the industry and in the hobby. And he told me about all of these. He told me about this Japanese television series that had him as a cartoon character or something crazy like this in there. And I keep seeing his name pop up on games. There's a lot of games that I've got where it's like, oh, Mike Elliott. So yeah, he's everywhere. So
yes, he is.
So I've got what I thought was the big box of Thunderstone Quest, but as you say, there's actually I think 3 of them now or something.
Yeah, and they're all the same size.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no room for that. I had 2 of them, and I stopped at that.
Right.
I just don't have any shelving. Don't have any. I had to throw out clothes. I was throwing out food. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, I need to go back to it because I played it a bit when I got it, and I thought, and here was the question: is do I sleeve all of these cards? Because I'm a card sleever. And I was like, do I sleeve all of these cards? Because it's going to cost me as much in sleeves as probably it is to get the actual game.
And I was a card sleever at that time also, but I stopped being a card sleever.
Right.
At that time. Now I don't sleeve anything.
The next one, number 7. This is a relatively recent title. This is Dune Imperium. Now, I've not played this game yet. It's passed me by for now, but I have heard so many good things about this game from so many different people. Mike, have you had a chance to try it?
No, but I know a little bit about it.
Okay.
I have friends who have taken the dive. It has a crazy rating. I think it's 8.4 the last time I looked, and it's been out for a little while.
Yeah.
Usually, a game can hit 10 or 9 or something, maybe for the first time it hits ratings when it gets enough. And a lot of those could be people who are involved with the game. But over time, this thing is holding up. So I'm getting very close to pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
I'm much more selective now in purchasing anything because I say I have to give up something.
Yeah.
So my pet is the next thing. I have to, my sweet little dog is going to have to go somewhere else for the next game. We'll see what happens. But anyway, this is a new genre, I heard it being called, a worker placement deck builder. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a few of them out. Although I thought worker placement deck builder, well, it's not, I guess it, see, I have trouble with these categories because I don't know what they mean.
Right.
I mean, is Great Western Trail a worker placement game?
In my opinion, no.
Moving. Huh?
In my opinion, no.
Okay, yeah, same with me, because you're not placing all your workers or anything. You're moving your workers.
Yeah.
But that would be a worker placement deck builder, I guess, for some people. But anyway, Dune looks intriguing. I've just started watching some playthroughs, and my buddy Bruce, who lives in Hawaii, is so big on the game. He says it's a family-level game because his granddaughter and people in the family are really having a good time with it. So maybe, and I think it's in the complexity, it's not high. Yeah. It's not even a 3. I don't think it's. So I hear great things about it, and I'm not a Dune fan, but they said it doesn't matter. It could be any theme.
Okay.
Theme not at all relevant. So I'm very interested in trying it.
It's been very high on my
gets that good.
my list of games I want to try. So because I haven't played it myself, what I did is I went and asked some of my patron supporters who voted on this game, and I've got some of their opinions here. So Kyle says, in Dune Imperium you use cards to place workers, but the cards that you don't use in a round are ones that they have a reveal ability, which is usually used for buying other cards, but other powers as well. So that sounds similar in a way to other games where if you use the card for its power, great, or you could use it for its gold value, which you then use to buy other cards. He does say that the player interaction in the combat zone gives bonuses to the winner and lesser bonuses to second and third place. So the player interaction is there, but he thinks he says it doesn't feel like it's got to take that element to it.
Right.
And he does say that the Dune theme is integrated well. Now, Mark B says that his favourite part of the deck building in the game is how it ties into the card play, which affects combat through cards which are kept for this purpose at the end of the round. It allows players to get the upper hand in combat through this hidden element and obtain prized round rewards which can make or break your game. So he could say that deck building enhances the worker placement element of the game. On the other hand, he does say that the con to this is that there are rarely options to thin your deck, and thinning the decks is an aspect of a number of deck building games. Therefore, as the game goes on, the cycling of the cards round as your deck gets bigger could increase the randomness of whether you get the right cards or not. And finally, Mark T says that he agrees with pretty much everything that Kyle and Mark B said. He said the deck building is simple. He says you have the 2 currencies, influence you acquire and strength for influence you acquire for acquiring cards and strength for combat. But then the cards also drive your actions on the board, which rely on completely separate resources: water, Solaris, and spice. The theme is well integrated with the 4 factions focusing on a particular aspect or mechanism. He said he thinks for the sci-fi enthusiast, it's a pretty darn good medium complexity game which lets you experiment with various strategies. So, we both need to try this.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's, and I may be in a minority on this, and I think Richard Garfield is too, because we talk about this a lot. A deck builder, what that means is you build a deck. It doesn't mean you get rid of cards.
Right, okay.
Now, what I did in Baseball Highlights to not end up with some massive deck is I just had, when you acquired a player, you send a player to the minor league. So your deck always stays at 50.
Yeah.
So that's one solution, because I agree that at times you want to get, certainly the way they've constructed most deck builders, you do want to get rid of some of the credit cards that just you're forced to start with. But Richard has always held it, and he has not yet done deck builders. If you follow him, he goes through phases of doing a mechanic.
Yeah.
Like he's in a draft. Most recently, he's had a lot of drafting games come out. So he wants his take on that out there and stuff. So he's going to get to it. He's got several in the works, but I don't think we'll see much culling in there. But you might find things staying the same.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of players I talk to, they'll say instantly, if I'm testing a deck builder or something, they'll say, where's the culling? How can I get rid of these cards?
Yeah. I mean, in Baseball Highlights 2045, you have the culling mechanism in there, in that whenever you gain a card, you have to get rid of a card. But that's thematic, because you're the size of your team.
I think it should.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Number 6. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but it has made it onto the list. And this is another game which a lot of people will say shouldn't be on this list, and this is Great Western Trail.
Wait a minute, isn't that on? No, is this a different show? Is this all-time great game?
This is a complete, we will get back to more actual core deck builders, pure deck builders soon. But Great Western Trail, designed by Alexander Pfister, came out in 2016, published by Eggert Spiel, Stronghold Games. Expansion came out in 2018, and a few months ago, it was revealed that they're going to be doing a new, effectively a second edition of the game. 3 different games, all using the same.
3 different games. I'm getting them all.
Yeah. Australia being one of them. I can't remember the other ones, but yeah. Now, my opinion on Great Western Trail is it's in my top 10 favourite games of all time. It is my favourite game that came out in 2016. I absolutely love it, but similar to Mage Knight, the deck building is a part of the game. It's a very important part of the game, but it isn't the whole game. So, Mike, Great Western Trail, fan?
Well, I love the game.
Okay.
I discovered it when I was at Essen. Was that 2016, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know which the year it came out. I discovered it there, and I was showing diamonds.
Yeah.
It was a little trick-taking card game I made, and I could do maybe 30 demos of that in a few hours. It was quick. But I made sure I made time. I said, listen, I want to get in a GWT. I want to get in it before you're done today. So I would play one a day. And I just thought it was just amazing. Yeah. I do find it, I mean, again, it's almost in the long and hard category, but not quite. I mean, it's certainly chewable. Yeah. It's not a nightmare to set up. It doesn't last forever. Any game that gets that popular is going to have people doing analysis.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of that available.
Yeah.
So sometimes I've learned that I don't want to spoil it for myself because I like to find those things out myself. Right. But at some point, if I'm just not getting anywhere, I'll say, okay, what is the big deal? Yeah. And they'll tell me. They said, the big deal is you go right to Kansas City.
That's one way.
It's the only way. You stop your first move is one short, and then you go in.
Yeah.
And you take the hit.
Oh, the 6 money.
And you get
right.
money.
Yes.
And on your second turn, you're getting 2 builders.
Yeah.
They said all this stuff they have worked out, and then on your second trip, and then so it becomes less about the cattle and more about the setup.
Yeah.
To get the building lead and other things and certain buildings, all that stuff. So that's great. A lot of people approach it like chess, which I played a lot of in my youth, but I have no interest in doing that again. Yeah. But I do enjoy. The game is just very pleasant.
Yeah.
The way and I don't mind losing. Most games I don't mind losing badly even. So I have a good time playing. That's what.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Great Western Trail came out, and the biggest criticism at the time was the playtime. A lot of people were spending 4 hours, maybe more, to play their first game of it, and that playtime comes down. I mean, my first game of it was probably about 4 hours, but now I can play it in about 2.5 at the most. So it, for me, isn't a long game. But as you say, the game is so popular. The game has been played hundreds, thousands of times. People have analysed it, and I have heard that this obvious first move of starting one space away from Kansas, getting the 6 money and everything else, that's been cleaned up in the new version. So they've obviously.
Oh, it has. Okay, good.
I think
right.
I don't completely know everything about it, but I think they've definitely analysed a lot of the information. And the other thing with Great Western Trail that I think is good is, apart from that particular, this is your optimum first move, there are so many different strategies that you can take in the game, and I've seen almost every strategy win. And it's just like, somebody does a building strategy, oh, that's broken, that's way too good. And then somebody else comes along and builds hardly any buildings, but does something completely different. Oh, and they win. Oh, well, that's broken as well. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. You can't have 10 broken strategies. So
my favorite to play is just get a lot of cattle and do the, and get the engineers and get up that row and get nice things going there. So that's the most fun for me.
Yeah, the big cow strategy, I think it's called. And for those people who haven't switched off yet, we now do have very much a deck builder game. This is legendary, and I've put all of these in one because the legendary system, which I think started with Marvel, I think it was Marvel Legendary Deck Building Game, was 2012. But since then, we've had Marvel, Alien, Firefly, James Bond, Big Trouble in Little China. There's been so many different offshoots to the legendary system that I've put them all in one. and that's come in 5th. Now, I've played the original one when it came out because I'm a Marvel fan, and I actually wasn't that keen on it for a couple of reasons. First of all, as we hinted at earlier on, I'm not generally a big fan of the here's one big deck, and then all of the cards will come out and you just buy them. And the other thing is I felt it was fairly abstract. I was drawing cards which were like, oh, well, this has got an Iron Man symbol on it, and this has got a Spider-Man symbol on. And if I play this card with this symbol on, with this card with this symbol on, then I get a bonus for playing that. I didn't feel that I was a superhero or in a superhero film or anything like that. I just felt that I was playing random cards with symbols, hoping that the combos fall together. And because it uses the play all mechanic, then, you know, setting up those combos, you have very little control over it. Now, I have only played it once or twice, and that was when it came out, and it's been a while. But Mike, what's your thoughts on the Legendary games?
I love Legendary.
Okay.
I love Legendary Marvel. I'm a big Marvel fan as well. There are 3 Marvel games I play a lot of now, and Legendary is one of them.
Okay.
I still play. The Guardians of the Galaxy came out. Wow, is that fun? I mean, everyone is just fun.
Right.
I did not like it at first.
Okay.
But for different reasons. I don't like the fact that it was semi-co-op, meaning you were tracking how players did and somebody could win the game. Because I play with these people who will try to make sure nobody wins if they can't win. And then there's no creative, cooperative building of your deck. So I immediately said, I will not play in a game unless it's 100% co-op.
Right.
Once we did that, at least for me, it became interesting because we're thinking of the other players. So you're not going to take the card. You're going to say, okay, you have a combo for this, right? Or, you know, what's the card you're waiting for? And okay, well, that one I can use. Well, this one so we'd help each other by trying to improve everyone's deck.
So I'd forgotten that the original game was semi-co-op, which would be another reason why I don't like it, because I absolutely hate semi-cooperative games.
Oh, I do too. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I play Marvel Champions a lot, which is an excellent game. As you say, you're a superhero in that game. And I play Marvel United the most.
Okay.
So Marvel United is my favorite Marvel game right now.
Right. Okay.
And I know that's strange because it's like a toy. It really is. But Eric Lang and Simon, the team he had, that was the last thing he did at Simon before he moved on. But they did a fantastic job of something that is playable and appealing to everyone, and, you know, probably sets a new way of designing games.
Okay.
But anyway, Legendary I love. I like the Alien.
Yeah.
That was a very thematic one. But my favorite is Marvel, and Legendary just stands up. When I'm in the mood for a quick game that, you know, and for me, that playing all is simply eliminating a thought process that if I'm in the right mood, that's perfect for me. I don't want to think that hard. Because when you're designing a lot, you're really working hard at designing, especially if you know, early designs, I have to play every role in the game. So I'm playing a 4-player game or something.
Right.
And putting my head in 4, I'm beat after a couple hours of that. So for me, these games are really a nice change. And I understand you're not a hero, but, you know, that doesn't bother me so much. You're putting it together. I really like the row of stuff that comes out, the locations, the difficulties, the villain, and what he can strike back. I mean, I think it's a very good system. And again, they're certainly getting the most out of it.
So the original game was semi-cooperative. Did they change that later then?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I never even read the rule books
anymore.
Except once. I'll read a new one that I haven't played. Like the Alien one is.
Oh, the Alien one is definitely, I mean, I've played the Alien one once, and the Alien one did probably get the most votes. Of all of the people who voted for Legendary, I think Alien got the most votes. And I played it once, and it was very, very thematic. I did enjoy that from a thematic point of view. The bit that I didn't enjoy about the game is the bit where one of us, spoilers, facehugger came out, and basically one of the characters got a facehugger. So basically we had until that character's next turn to get the facehugger off them, otherwise which is absolutely thematic. But when you strip it down to the mechanisms of the game, it was, have any of us been lucky enough to draw the right card before that player's next turn? We had no control over it. And that was my thing. It was like, in some ways I'm thinking, oh, it's exciting. Have we got it or have we not? And in other ways I'm thinking, hang on a minute, we're about to get a character eliminated, and it is simply down to, were we lucky enough to draw the right card? No, sorry, you're dead. And it was like, but that's the whole thing with luck and randomness in games, which is a totally different topic. But yeah,
and it's interesting though that the randomness of that is also thematic.
Yes.
I mean, when you get that face guy on you, you know, the reality is not going to be, okay, well, somebody got the card, you know,
yeah,
or can we plan to get the card? Yeah. And no, it's now we gotta pull one out of our hat.
Yeah, I think over the last certainly the last 3 or 4 years, and it's been more than that since I played the Alien game. My tastes have been evolving and my tastes have been changing, and I've started to appreciate that randomness in a game can make it, you know, more exciting. So yeah, I'd definitely be interested in playing that again. Yeah.
If you ever do a randomness episode of any kind, try to remember to put me on the panel.
Okay, you've got your own thoughts on that.
I can well, it all comes from Richard Garfield when I started doing trading card games, but he explained to me what luck really is, and what randomness is.
Okay.
And all I'll say, and sometimes I get outspoken about this, but people that tell me, let's pick a multiplayer game like Puerto Rico, or a game they think is all skill because there's no randomness to them. If they're playing with more than 2 people, there's more randomness than the legendary game for 2 people.
Right.
So that's just how it works.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think legendary is a very good pick.
Right, number 4 on the list, and this is another relatively recent game. This is The Lost Ruins of Arnak, designed by Min and Elwyn, published in 2020 by Czech Games Edition. It's another game. It's one of the 3 games that were coming out at the same time, which are a combination of deck building and worker placement. And Lost Ruins of Arnak does it. One of the twists with Lost Ruins of Arnak is that there's no discard pile in the game. So basically you play your cards, and then at the end of your turn, your cards do not go to a discard pile. They go onto the bottom of your deck. So it's always cycling around. Now, I've done a lot of work with Czech Games Edition over the past 10 years. So I was involved in the development of this game. I remember playing the very first prototype of it, which used bits of Lego for some of the components. Because Min and Elwyn are a lovely couple. I've known them for quite a few years, and I've worked with them both professionally on this project and other projects. And yeah, they raided their kids' Lego to make some bits for the prototype. And it really, I knew when I played it and during development that it was going to be good. And it's really nice to see that this game has not only been good, but this has been one of the most popular games that came out last year. Have you had a chance to try it yet, Mike?
Oh, yes. yes. What a beautiful game.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I would watch a run through and I'd say, wow, that looks great. But then when I got the game, you know, you can't tell on a video thing. But I knew it looked fantastic. But when I got it, it's still a setup downstairs because I'm in the middle of a solo game now. And I'm about to start that campaign that they have available, but I wanted to get familiar with the basic solo game first. But I play a lot with my friends. It's what a beautiful game. And I was reluctant at first. I waited till people I knew got it and told me about it, because at first I'm thinking, well, first of all, it's another recipe game.
Yep.
You know, recipe games to me, they have to be better. There's got to be something about that, or I'm not just going to add another recipe game to my collection, which is get stuff, turn it in for other stuff.
Spend it, get points. Yeah.
And it becomes a math puzzle. But Lost Ruins of Arnak is not that. It is that, but it has what's really interesting, I think, is how they built in real creativity possible in how you acquire your stuff.
Yeah.
And setting yourself up to get more and more stuff. Now, there may come a time when I do that enough and I say, okay, well, that's it. I don't know. But really a challenge, because my first score, and I'm looking at other people's scores, I say, how are they doing that?
Yeah.
How are you getting to all the way to the temple?
Yeah.
I got to the temple already once. So I said to myself, okay, now I did that. But, you learn how important assistants are and every little element of that game. It took me several games to realize you could actually go dig somewhere. I don't even know, is it called to dig when you go somewhere when there is not a monster?
Yeah.
There's just a site, and you don't have to pay the cost.
Exactly. It's already been explored. It's already been discovered. You can keep going. So basically,
keep going back to that.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
The places you can go with your workers get better as the game goes on.
There's so many choices in what you're going to do and how you're going to create something.
Yeah.
And the deck building part is really important and exciting, I think. Like the difference between an artifact, how that comes in, you can use it, and then you need the tablet after that to reuse it, and then an item. And I think they're designed beautifully. That they're interesting and they're different, and you can, it's not like a super balanced row or something, which is just boring. Just is vanilla. It's exciting.
You have some items that cost a lot of money that aren't worth that many points, but their effect will be really good. And then you have other cards with maybe not so good an effect, but they're worth like 3 points at the end of the game. So they use it's interesting how they use trading card game theory in that game, because I was involved in that so long. You get your core, you get a cost system. Mm-hmm.
So, because in most trading card games, not Pokemon so much, but Pokemon does have a cost system of playing a kind of Pokemon, then having the next one on top, et cetera, but it's a different kind. But anyway, those cost curves, you get it. So, wow, that's perfect. I've got the right cost curve for the right person. And then what you do is once you understand your game, you mix it all up, because a perfect cost system is just going to be bland and boring. So then you start making your stars, and you make sure that you have answers for them in different ways and stuff. But that game does it, because there are cards where in my situation I'll just say, wow, I got to get that card. And for somebody else, they're looking at a different card, because there's so much in the game that puts you on a different footing as you develop in the game. But it's a fantastic design.
Now, similar to Mage Knight, you are not going to be cycling through your deck dozens of times in this game. It's basically, you will draw up a hand of cards. You'll probably go through your deck, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times in the game, something like that.
Yes, I've read people who figured out how many times you're going to get to use an item or an artifact based on when you acquire it. Like if it's round 1, you'll get maybe 2, 3, whatever they say, uses out of it and that stuff. So the game goes quickly. I know some people say too quickly, maybe.
Right.
Or I had read that early on, but I don't think that's true. When I'm playing, it's very satisfying.
I think when you start playing Lost Ruins of Arnak, you will go, wait a minute, it's 5 rounds? I haven't done anything. I've only got halfway up the temple. This game is way too short. And then you play it with somebody who's played it a few times, and you're right, after round 5, they're at the top of the temple, they've explored 3 times, and you're like, how have you done all of that? You've had the same time as me, and it's just...
Well, they set up their rounds, so you do twice as much as you're getting towards the end.
Yeah. So
it's incredible. You can find one way to eke something else out. But that's a great one.
Yeah. So that's Lost Ruins of Arnak, and it's been recently nominated for one of the Spiel des Jahres awards. So good luck to CG for that.
Spiel des Jahres. Yeah. Wow, I thought that wouldn't that be a Kenner Spiel usually?
Yeah. I'm saying one of the Spiel des Jahres awards, because I couldn't remember which one.
Okay.
Right, number 3 on the list, and it would be an absolute tragedy if this game wasn't on this list. And it's the one that started it all. Dominion, published in 2008 by Rio Grande Games. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, this was Rio Grande's first game that they published themselves.
I think you're right, but
well, let's say it is.
I've known Jay, and I knew him well even then. So I know most of his games at that time were titles he would co-partner with from Europe. I think you're right. I remember the difficulty Donald had in getting it published.
Right.
And the team he put together, and I know them pretty well. There was a World Board Gaming Championship, WBC, the year that came out. And there were about 8 of us that played nothing but Dominion for the whole convention.
And this was just the base game when it came out.
Yeah. Oh, it was. And by the third day, some of these guys had already figured out decks that they were interested in. Because that game had the stacks. You select the cards before the game and you put so many in each stack, which is one thing Richard loves Dominion for that, because you can sit there and figure out the deck you're going to build before you start
playing. Yeah.
And then, of course, you can change on the fly to try to adopt yourself. But some people prefer those center row deck builders. They're really different games.
Yeah.
But this one, I would think, would apply more to you because you have that control right from the start. But they talked about chapel decks, and they talked about these kind of decks and those kind of decks. And, the chapel thing was crazy. I remember it was one day we're all spending there, just playing game after game after game, and we're all trying chapel decks. See who could get down to the fewest cards that made the most sense. And if they timed it right, they'd get down to getting enough for a province every turn or something. So but that is the grand. That's the grand of them all.
Yeah, without Dominion, we wouldn't have any of the other games on this list, because Dominion was the first deck building game, as far as I know. Although I think somebody was telling me earlier this year that StarCraft was the first game that used deck building, but I've not really looked into that. But yeah, so 2008, and it's still going strong, and it's still got expansions coming out for it, I believe.
I just got Menagerie. That's the latest expansion, I believe. And I got the big box, which has all second edition. I mean, it has the latest edition of everything.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's still fun.
So I got it when it came out, and I bought the first probably 3 boxes, I think, when it came out. Then I stopped buying it. Dominion is one of the games. I mean, this is a sort of a trait of games from Donald X, is the variability in the setup is phenomenal. So in the base game of Dominion, you have 25 different market cards, and you pick 10 of them. Well, straight away, you've already got a million combinations or whatever right from the get-go, and just changing a few cards will mean that your game will play out very differently. So that's really nice. And if you start adding in all of the different expansion sets, I dread to think how many combinations there are. I really do. So
they did a great job of developing that game. It started with Wizards of the Coast.
Did it?
Did you know?
I didn't know that.
And do you know the story? A lot of people were convinced Donald X Vaccarino did not exist.
Yes. Yeah, I've heard that.
You did follow that story?
I've heard that story, yeah.
It was so funny. And of course he exists.
Yeah.
But I know I've never seen him anywhere.
No, exactly.
I've never. So and Jay would help support those rumors.
Right. Okay.
Helps the game get some buzz, I guess. But it was very funny. But yeah, it was it was I don't know how much I can say, but I say a little bit. I mean, it was being worked on at Wizard of the Coast, and Donald was working there.
Right.
And so when he left, one of the things he asked Richard, because they had issues, a lot of issues that they didn't know how to solve, so they put the thing on the shelf. And Richard said, "Sure, you can solve this, make it work. It's all yours. Just go ahead and do it." So that's what he did, with the blessing of anybody at WotC. So
excellent. Yeah, I mean, Dominion is another of the games which I think is probably best played with an app, because the setup time, especially if you've got all of the boxes, is like, you can't just say, oh, let's play a quick game of Dominion. Right, let's pick 10 cards at random out of these hundreds that we've got, and then we've got to find the markets for those 10 cards, and then we've got to put them out. But there's been problems with the app, and there's been various things happening, but I believe that there's a new app coming.
I don't even know what the status is now. Is there one that sort of works?
There's one that's coming, I believe.
But okay. Well, a little late coming.
A little, yeah.
I've learned to set up my box so all the cards are right with the title card. So because I'm way past playing the suggested setup, so we do sometimes take them out. So I usually just look through and everybody gets a vote, and put that one in. Yeah, let's put that one in too. I'll go with that. And you sometimes get some crazy setups.
Cool. So here's the thing. In 2008, I remember being there at the Essen when Dominion came out, and it just took everything by storm. We were playing Dominion every night. Some of my friends who went there to Essen for 4 days to see all of the new games spent 4 days playing Dominion in the hotel and didn't see the rest of the convention. It was just something special the year that it came out, and it was great to be there and to be, around while it was all happening, and to see that so many great games have come from, what on the surface is a very simple mechanism, a very simple idea, but it's been done really well.
All of us were saying, "Why didn't I think of that?"
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And it was great to see that have the impact it did.
Yeah. Now, Dominion does get a fair share of criticism in that there isn't really any theme in the game and you're not really building your deck to do anything. And I mentioned earlier on that when I played the first Thunderstone game, I much preferred it because there was a point to me actually doing what I was doing. And I feel the same way about Trains from AEG as well. It is a deck building game very similar to Dominion, but then there's actually a point to your building your deck. You are doing something on a board with the cards that you've got. But there is something pure about Dominion, and I would still happily play Dominion again, despite the fact that you're not doing it for any reason other than just to build your deck and get points. There's something nice about it because it's relatively simple and quick.
I think, all those comments are retrospect to Dominion. So the world that Dominion came into, Dominion was fantastic. But as soon as people realize, this could be just a mechanic in a game. So you could make a game where you're doing something, and a lot of them are really, really good. So that changes it.
Yeah.
Dominion, it's there and it's pure and it's what it is. But if you find one of these themed ones that you like, you're going to move on and play that more, obviously. But I've always had a soft spot for basic Dominion, although I understand what you're saying. And of course, I joined that group too, with Baseball Highlights, taking the same concept, but trying to make something happen with the cards.
Yeah. So moving on to another game that I've not played. This is number 2 on the list, and I've not played it. And again, this is another one where I've combined 3 different things into one, and this is Clank. Because some people voted for Clank, some people voted for Clank in Space, some people voted for Clank Legacy, and I've bundled them all together into one, which is Clank, which I've not played. And I have played a lot of Clank. It's very good, apparently.
Clank, it's really good. It is a bear to set up.
Okay.
So when I first played it, though, I didn't care. The game was that good. It was certainly worth the setup time because it's an intriguing game. You're going into the dungeon in the basic Clank, and you're getting stuff, and you've got to get out. And that is a player decision, kind of, that, if you're last to get out, you're going to be under pressure because the other players are trying to trap you in a way, they're moving forward and all that stuff. So it's intriguing. I thought Clank in Space was very interesting too. I haven't done Clank Legacy, although people tell me it's one of the best Legacy games.
Yes.
And how it develops. So if I had enough space, maybe after I don't know if I'm going to get my wife to move.
Well, I was going to say the dog's going when you buy Dune Imperium, so I dread to think what's next.
And I need someone to play games with, so I think I'll keep my wife.
Right. Okay.
But it's just the idea of setting up another legacy like that. That's sprawling. A little daunting.
Right.
So this is the game that when I had this one and Thunderstone Quest going at the same time, I wanted to set them both up, and then I said, gee, these are good games, so we could play them more often. Yeah. But then somebody comes by and says, I want to play something else. And I think, now I got to break this all down. And I was ready to play again. And it just got a little much for me.
Yeah.
But I think Clank is certainly a really good deck builder, deserves its spot on this list for the response, and has opened up. I think it opened up to a lot of casual gamers too. I mean, game I think is simple enough, but it's that setup time is a bear.
Yeah. So I've not played it.
That limits its play time a bit, but it's a good game.
Yeah. So a local friend of mine, Rick, has got Clank Legacy, and we are due to start playing that at some point later this year. So yeah. Now, although I've not played it, again, I did speak to my Patreon supporters, and Chrissy came back and she gave me some feedback herself. She said that she rates Clank so highly because the combination of deck building and push your luck is so much fun. Adding cards to your deck can be a double-edged sword. They can be powerful, but they also cause you to make Clank when played, increasing the chances that your cubes will be drawn from the bag on a dragon attack. Working out the appropriate number of cards to buy for your deck, thinning cards from your deck, and timing the use of those cards can make or break your strategy. Now, what's interesting is that Chrissy says that she's not normally a fan of deck building games as such, but the dungeon adventure theme of Clank drew her in, and as soon as she'd played it, everything just clicked. The mechanisms work very well together with the theme. The final rush to get out of the dungeon to safety is tense, exciting, and all of that. So yeah, I've seen it being played at my local club, and it's just one of those ones that, as I say, there's not enough time to play all of the games, but so many people have been telling me that Clank Legacy is brilliant that I've got to play it. So yeah, that's definitely on the list. So that is number 2, Clank in Space and Clank Legacy. And finally, we get to number 1 on the list, and this is Aeon's End.
And
Go on.
I have never played this.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I can talk about this one because I've played it lots. So this is originally published in 2016 from Action Phase Games and Indie Boards and Cards, designed by Kevin Riley. Came out in 2016, but the game is still going strong. They are still releasing more content for the game. There is a digital app, which is a brilliant implementation of the game. And like a lot of the other apps that we've spoken about today, makes setup time, almost nothing. So it's really good. The game is still going strong, and there's a lot more content for it. I love it. I think Aeon's End is very possibly my favourite deck building game, and there's a few things about it. Why? So first of all, you don't have to play all of the cards in your hand, right? That's the first big thing for me, is this is a game where you do have more choice and more control over the cards in your hand. If you've got a card in your hand and you haven't used it, then the spells, you can't actually discard them voluntarily, okay? The money cards, you could play them to generate the money, but then not spend the money. So the very, very basic cards that you have that basically give you money, you can effectively discard them and not do anything with them. The other big thing about Aeon's End and what it sets apart from everything else is when your deck is empty, you do not shuffle your discard pile to make a new deck. You turn your discard pile over. Therefore, the order in which you put your cards into the discard pile matters. So let's go back to something that I said an hour ago. One of the problems that I have with a lot of deck building games is the luck of the draw as to whether you get those combos out or not. If you've got one card that says gain 2 money, but if you played a purple squid on this turn, gain 6 money, well, it's the luck of the draw whether you get those cards out at the same time. With Aeon's End, you are deliberately putting cards into your discard pile in the certain order so that when you turn it over, you get those cards out. those small tweaks for me just make that game really, really good. It's a shame you've not tried it, Mike, but...
Well, it is. And I don't know what happened, really. I was in a busy design time. It snuck in, and I heard about it, certainly. And I have a couple questions.
Yeah, fire away.
You can answer me, I hope.
I'll try.
Where can I buy the base set for less than $230?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
That's the lowest price I've found, and I've looked everywhere.
Wow. Okay.
Just the base set of Iron's End. I want to play the game.
Right.
$230 on Amazon and eBay. Forget about it. And,
wow.
Is there anywhere I can get the base game, or will I ever get it again?
That's a good question. I don't know. I thought it would be available, but...
Now, I did read some posts where people were saying every year it has a Kickstarter, and there's one on now.
Yep.
And after the Kickstarter, when the Kickstarter fulfills, they usually release a retail version of the core set.
Right, okay.
So I'm sort of holding out for that hope, but I didn't know. The other thing I wanted to know, because this affects, I guess, whether I'd get it, can you actually remember the order of that discard pile? Can you actually, are you putting in a couple cards and know they're together and hoping you don't split them because of the draw? Get one and then don't get the other something? Or
you're right. I could put two cards that combo together into my discard pile, and then the timing just ends up being slightly wrong. But to be honest, because it's a cooperative game, I would always allow people to look. Yeah, it's a cooperative game. So it's not a competitive game. That's the other thing about it is, I've come to love cooperative games more and more over the years, and the fact that this is a cooperative game, and you're all working together to defeat, this bad nemesis. The other thing that I really like about the game, and we talked about Dominion, where you have a market of 10 cards in Dominion. In this, you have a market of 9 cards, but it's made up of 3 different types of cards: gems, relics, and spells. And you've got limitations of how many of each you put in there. But you choose which ones you want in there. Now, in Dominion, you mentioned earlier on that you will have players going, I think we should play with that one. Okay, we'll put that one in. Now, I think we should play with that one. We'll put that one in. In Aeon's End, what you do is you choose your character and you choose the nemesis that you're fighting against. And then you think, right, what cards are going to be good against that nemesis? Now, when you start playing the game, you probably wouldn't do that. You would take one of the preset things, preset markets. But as you play the game, you might go, oh, wait a minute, we're coming across this enemy, and this enemy keeps spawning little gribbly monsters with 1 hit point every turn. Well, there's a spell that I've got which does 1 damage to up to 3 targets. We should put that in the market. So what you end up with is you have this meta game where choosing what you have in the market, once you've decided which enemy you're facing, is actually part of the setup of the game, and it could be an important part of the game. And I actually really like that. Even though it extends the setup, it means that as players, you've got more control. Because if you just went with a completely random market, it said, right, here's a random enemy, here's a random market, straight away before the game's even started, you might be lucky or unlucky based on what you've got in the market. So it's just, it's such a nice game.
So it sounds like it's probably the most strategic of the deck builders.
One of the most strategic I've played as well. Now, Aeon's End Legacy. Let's talk about Aeon's End Legacy for a minute, because
that's available, I guess.
Okay.
But all I've read says if you're just starting Aeon's End, start with the core set.
Nope.
But I just can't find
it. So. Other way. No? Start with Legacy.
Really?
Yes.
So I can get that.
Absolutely. So here's the thing with Legacy games in general, and I am generalizing here, but I would generally not play a Legacy version of a game until I'd played the base game. Because I think the Legacy version of a game takes it one step further and expands upon it, right? Aeon's End Legacy does it in a different way. Aeon's End Legacy is effectively a prequel to Aeon's End. It's 8 chapters, and at the end of the 8 chapters, you end up with the full rules of Aeon's End. So it actually starts off... Have you played Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion?
Yes.
Right. Aeon's End Legacy is effectively the first 5 chapters of Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. In other words, chapter 1 is really simple. Here's the basic rules. Here's what you do. Chapter 2, we're now going to introduce these rules. Chapter 3, we're going to introduce these rules. It gets more complex as it goes on. And then by the end of Aeon's End Legacy, you now know how to play Aeon's End because you are now at the point.
Could you use those cards?
You can use those cards, and you can use the characters that you have built up during Aeon's End Legacy to play a game of Aeon's End.
To play a regular game.
Yeah. As I say, it's a prequel. It takes place before. So what you end up with, having played through an entire campaign, is you end up with a playable character which can be used in Aeon's End.
Wow.
So,
well, I am getting that.
Yeah.
Because that sounds like the way to start.
Yeah. I've played through the whole of Aeon's End Legacy. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. The story was good. The narrative was good. The way that the cards evolve as you play through the campaign is really good. And I'm a big fan of where it introduces rules to you as you go along. And yeah. So.
Well, it certainly deserves the #1 spot if it brings that much to deck building.
Yeah.
It really seems to, especially for the strategist and someone who likes to think a little bit.
Yeah.
Does some good things there.
The only one downside, before I make it sound like Aeon's End Legacy or Aeon's End is the best game I've ever played, is you have a turn order deck. And the turn order deck is made up of 4 player cards, which if you're playing a 4-player game is 1 for each. If you're playing a 2-player game is 2 of each, and 2 bad cards. Okay, so it's always 6 cards, and it's always 4 for the players, 2 for the bad guys. That gets shuffled, that gets placed face down, and every turn you draw the top card, and that player takes a turn. Okay,
I think that's wonderful.
It's wonderful.
I think that's great.
But the games are so tight. Sometimes I have played a number of games of it where it has come down to, if that's a player card next, we win. If it's an enemy card, we lose. Now
that's perfect. That has that feel in Marvel United too.
Okay.
Cards slip up. Because if it's that card where he moves 3, we're done.
Yeah.
We're dead.
Yeah.
As a group, but we can stay alive if it's a different
one.
Yeah,
it's weird because I can see from a design perspective that means they've designed the game so tight and so balanced that it really goes down to the wire. But also the Eurogamer in me is going, hang on a minute, we've been playing this for an hour, we've invested loads of time and energy into it, and we win or lose based on the flip of a card. But the point is, we worked hard to get to that point.
Well, and of course you have options.
Yeah.
We work so hard that we're going to ignore the one that kills us. Just go to the next one. I mean, you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Game that's going to slap you around a little bit and say, well, this time you don't get your way.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
So I like
Now, Aeon's End has a nice progression through the game because as the game goes on, your characters are getting more powerful as you're buying more cards and everything else. But the enemy deck is divided into 3 stages and it's seeded. So all of the stage 1 cards come out first, then stage 2, then stage 3. So you really have this feeling of your characters developing over the period of a game. You're getting better, you're doing more stuff, but the enemies are also getting tougher. And it's just really, really nice. Yeah, I love Aeon's End. I would never say no to a game of Aeon's End, I think. So, yeah, it's very good.
Well, I'm definitely getting that Legacy.
Definitely get Legacy.
That solves my problem of not being able to find an affordable one. So.
Right. So that is the end of the 10 games that were voted on by my Patreon supporters. Mike, which deck building game do you think should have been on this list?
Ascension. It's ridiculous it's not on the list. It's ridiculous.
It's because it's got horrible artwork.
I think Ascension holds up as still being the best center row deck builder.
Right.
Period. It's interesting. It's deep. You can play every set that comes out as a whole. Right here I have Deliverance.
Yep.
Just came out. And a friend of mine's coming over at noon, and that's what we're doing.
Nice.
Because it's all new cards. There's new mechanics. It's fantastic.
So when did the base game come out of Ascension?
Huh?
When did the base game of Ascension come out?
Oh, well, it was the first of the center rows. So.
I will look it up now because
do that.
I don't think it was that
this
long.
I recommend. It's inexpensive. Ascension Eternal is the best cards over the entire life of Ascension, according to the developers
Okay.
of the game. And it's all in one neat little 2-player package. So you got everything you need to play the game, and it's an exciting game. There's lots of combos you can get to. I think this game, to me, and this game has a heritage of spawning Star Realms.
Yes.
Because some of the same people left the development of Ascension to do Star Realms.
Right.
But I think Ascension is fantastic. I have a lot of the boxes, and with Deliverance, it's sort of making a jump to a new level. And with this combo, I'm happy. But even just getting the Ascension Eternal is really fun. 2-player.
So Ascension, the base game came out in 2010.
2010.
Which is 2 years after Dominion. Obviously, it's inspired by Dominion, but it turned it on its head with the center row. So rather than having the different market piles that you buy from, it's all of the cards just get mixed, put in a big pile, and then they come out in a center row.
And I'm a card game player, and I love that big pile of cards. Just the idea of a big pile of cards. Now, I will say, you run into, some people have the same problem with Race for the Galaxy if they can't resist making a huge pile of all the expansions and stuff. If you do that with Ascension, you're going to lose a lot of the synergy.
Yeah.
So what you can do, each set is built within its pile to give you some good synergy and stuff. So, but Ascension, I mean, I understand. I mean, people are playing the new and the shiny, and they're going for the more advanced games. I mean, it's not, the game is not Ian's End. I'll give you that. But just for fun, and I mean, the app works well too. It's just a great game. By the way, my wife's favorite, she said, make sure you mention my favorite deck builder, is Trains.
Right.
Can't get enough of Trains. She loves, now, what is it called, those cards you have to hold in your hand that are the junk or the waste? Waste, Right, yeah. So you collect a lot of waste. She loves doing that and then trying to get rid of it and all. So although it's basic, and, my friend who likes Trains a lot doesn't like it because they don't have trains. They have cubes.
That's true. That is true.
If they made a version with trains, he'd be all over it because he loves the Ticket to Ride because of the train.
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are a couple of thoughts.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan of Trains. I do have Trains and the Rising Sun expansion. And generally speaking, if you gave me Dominion or Trains, I would always play Trains for the same reason as I mentioned earlier on, that I like to be doing something with the deck that I've built.
Right.
But yeah, I was also surprised that Ascension wasn't on here, because although I personally don't like the art style of Ascension, and I know that's just cosmetic, but also it has the center row, which I'm not keen on. Ascension has been massively popular since it came out and is still going strong. So I'm surprised it wasn't on the list, because whereas Dominion is kind of the core pure deck builder with no fancy frills, Ascension is kind of the same, but with the center row. There's nothing else to it. And we talked earlier on about there being 2 currencies in the game, one you use to buy cards and the other one you use for combating. Well, that was first done in Ascension, I think.
Now they have more currencies.
Right.
This one, you have another currency that can really do interesting things. You can take a card from the center row and play it right away, then discard it if you pay the cost. I forget what they call that, but there's another cube that you get to collect. There's cards that come into the center row and give everyone at the table a cube of the special color, and then if somebody buys the card, they'll get another.
Right.
So there's more interesting ways, and there's the hero of the game sits on top of the center row, is not a part of it, but costs 16 of these special resources. So if you get her, you get to take her right into your hand.
Okay.
So there's enough new stuff in each of these things, and this one appears so far, I haven't played it yet, but appears to have been developed very nicely and added some good things.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the game, it must be still popular if there's more content still coming out for it all the time.
Now, they just had a huge Kickstarter for Ascension Tactics.
Okay.
Which... I very rarely enter Kickstarters because I can't tell, what the game does for me until I hear from people or see it. So if it does really well, I'll take a look at it. But it has a lot of minis, and that drove the cost way up, of course. So it's $100 plus game.
Okay.
But and I don't paint like you do, so I'm not going to paint.
And you touched on.
So I like the simple.
You touched on the app as well for Ascension, because I think the base app for Ascension is free. I think, because I'm pretty sure I've got it, and I'm pretty sure I've played it a lot.
But and then you have all the sets, so you can buy them.
Right.
So I just play with the 10th anniversary. They let you play with the first one or the 10th anniversary, and I usually just play with the 10th anniversary.
Yeah. Cool.
But it works well.
Right. So we are all done. We've been through all of the games that were voted on by Patreon supporters, and we've also been through the one that you think should have been on the list. I think.
What about you?
To be fair, I think this is a fairly good list. The two on, apart from Star Realms, which I said at the start I'm not keen on, but I knew it was going to be on the list. I think this is a fair list. I think the ones that I would have voted on would be on this list. And the ones on this list which I haven't played, which is Clank and Dune Imperium, are two of the games which I am most looking forward to playing at some point soon. I just need to find time and make time to play them, because so many people are saying good things about them. Is deck building here to stay?
Yes.
Yes.
there's no other answer.
No.
Because as a designer, it's a fantastic way to introduce cards.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Whether you're doing it for free or not. I had this is a side, but very quick one. Do you think Undaunted Normandy is a deck?
Oh. I'm playing Undaunted North Africa on Saturday night. Is it? Well, it technically is.
Yes, it
absolutely is. Right? But here's, I thought you were trying to catch me out there.
That's what I'm playing. I'm playing a deck builder.
So some of
it uses it in very unique ways. Yes. It uses your deck in unique ways. I love it.
But
are you playing with reinforcements? Did you get a
No. I'm just playing just the starting scenarios from Undaunted North Africa, but reinforcements will be coming out later this year. So here's some questions for you then. And I'm kind of glad that these games didn't appear on this list, because we've already caused controversy by having Mage Knight and Great Western Trail on here.
That's true.
Orleans, deck builder or not?
I wouldn't. I don't like the game, so
okay.
I probably would say it's not. But you're getting cards. You're right.
Well, you're not getting cards. That's the thing.
Huh?
You're not getting cards. It's a bag builder.
Oh, that's true. It's okay.
It's a bag builder. But the fact that they are cubes and not cards, it's exactly the same mechanism.
Yeah.
So a lot of people class Orleans or Automobiles, the other ones in the train series, or any other bag builder. A lot of them, they didn't get voted on enough to make it into the top 10, but a lot of people class them as deck builders. Here's the next question for you: Concordia.
Yes.
Deck builder?
Yes.
Ah, you see, I say no.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think it's just a gut reaction when people say Concordia is a deck builder, and I go, no, it's not. And then when you think about it, it probably is. But that was the one game which caused almost World War III when people were suggesting it was a deck builder. So
okay, well, compared to this list, that's pretty interesting, because I would argue it's more of a deck builder than some of these things on the list, because you're influencing everything.
Yeah,
it's the game. You're influencing how the game scores.
Yeah.
From the cards you get, and you're influencing where you can play and what action you can take.
It's the fact that
there's nothing without the cards.
It's the fact that you don't have a deck. You have a hand of cards, and you're buying cards to your hand, and you're playing cards from your hand.
Oh,
there's no actual deck.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Well, that's why you would rule out regular card games. See, I thought regular card games should be deck builders.
Yeah. So
I'm drawing cards into my hand.
And this is where I ended up a couple of months ago, of just trying to say, don't include this because we don't think that's a deck builder, and people arguing that it should be a deck builder. So then we tried to define what a deck builder game is. And we ended up backing ourselves so much into a corner by saying, well, in a deck building game, you have a deck, and when your deck runs out, you shuffle your discards. Oh, you mean not Aeon's End then? I'm like, oh no. And we which is why, as I say, we just opened it up and said, look, you just pick whatever you want. But it's been some really interesting discussions over the last few months.
It is, yes.
And if you look on BGG actually does have a category of deck building. And apparently, somebody told me this week, Too Many Bones is in there as having the deck building mechanism. And I'm like,
does it?
No way. No way is Too Many Bones a deck builder. But by the pure definition of what you're doing, forget the fact that it's cards and it's a deck, during a game of Too Many Bones, you are buying skill dice, and I'm like, no. But yeah, apparently on BGG, deck building is the mechanism which has been, and I'm like, no, I don't see that. So, but anyway, it's been good.
Very good, Paul.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
So I would say, what have you got planned for the rest of today? But you've already told me. You've got a friend coming round.
Yeah, playing Ascension Deliverance.
Right.
And play testing basketball a few more times.
Right, okay.
Every day I play at least once.
So basketball highlights 2045. Oh, right. It's all 2045, right.
No. Basketball highlights will not be.
Right.
Basketball highlights may, of course, the publisher's going to decide everything, and we don't have a guaranteed publisher yet.
Okay.
We have somebody, we have a first refusal set up with Eagle Griffin. So they'll take the first look.
Right.
But then we'll see. And in the end, I very often design without knowing if it ever gets published. Yeah. But I think it's pretty good. It's developed into a bit of a dice builder.
Right.
Meaning there's upgrade dice. So everybody starts with core dice. You only have 4 players on your team instead of 5. And the game takes about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And you get an NBA score every time. So those are some of the mission statements I wanted, but I also wanted a game that has fun and a strategic element. So there is pretty good level of that when you're making your re-rolls, because which could be more than 5, you could be rolling a lot of dice, and all the dice are special and they aid certain players. All the players have an ability, so it's fun. And I think in between your re-rolls, and the re-rolls have an order to it, who the offense or defense has to choose first to re-roll, and the other one will re-roll to try to affect something that might have happened. And it feels like basketball. So
okay.
It's, I've had 7 versions, and this is the version that I'm sticking with this time.
So just before we wrap things up, let me just ask you a question then about Baseball Highlights 2045. Are you a baseball fan?
Oh, huge.
Right. So
I've been since I was a little boy.
Okay. So then you went on and you did Football Highlights.
Yeah.
Are you a football fan as well?
Yes. Not as big a football fan as baseball, but close.
So are you also a basketball fan?
That I wouldn't have gotten this far in the design if I didn't embrace basketball. Right. Let's put it that way. So I spent time when I was trying to do a soccer game. But soccer is very hard, at least for me. Where's the game? Well, it's in the movement of a ball on a field. Yeah. How exciting is that for one of these quicker playing games? And I couldn't find, because there's not a lot of scoring. So I had something passable, but then I said, soccer is basketball. They're the same game. It's ball movement, except there's a lot more scoring.
Yeah.
And crazy things. So I just switched this, and then I started watching a lot of basketball. And so I knew about basketball, and I was somewhat of a fan. But I really got into it. I'm watching the playoffs very closely now. And worldwide, basketball has a good following. Okay. So I think for the reason I asked of the game
is that I didn't really
may do something in Europe.
The reason I ask is I didn't really know anything about baseball, and then I played Baseball Highlights 2045, and then I started watching a couple of matches of baseball, and then it sort of struck me how thematic the game was. And that's why I assumed you had to be a fan of the game in order to create a game which felt thematic. And therefore, if you weren't a fan of football or basketball, that it would be quite a difficult job for you to capture the feel of a game in a card game if you didn't actually know the game. So
I couldn't do it.
Right.
I have to be passionate about what I'm trying to do, because these games are pretty abstract, and I'm trying to give the player the feel of the game.
Yeah.
And so you have to decide which part of it is worth doing, right? And as you can tell from playing baseball highlights a little bit, there's a lot of baseball that didn't make it.
Yeah.
No outs, no innings. I mean, there's a lot of baseball that's not there. So there's a lot of sim games, we call them, simulation games, that are fantastic. I play a lot of them. Very small publishers do some of them, but they're wonderful. They have a fun way of representing the stats of the players, and they're very accurate. That's a process that wouldn't excite me that much anyway. But I knew I wasn't going in that direction because the games are legendary in that field. So so it's been fun. I mean, it's had a mixed bag of success so far with it, but baseball highlights won't stop selling. I mean, it's still talked about a lot. It's under the radar of the big games.
Yes. But
for 6 years now, it's been there.
Yeah.
And it keeps evolving.
Yeah. So. And it did get a few votes in this as well. Not enough to make the top 10, but it did get a few votes in there. So
I saw that. Yeah.
Cool. So games that we're going to go and play because we have done this video today together. I am going to go and play Thunderstone Quest again because
I'm going to order Aeon's End right after this is done, the Legacy game, and start playing.
Yeah. And I quite fancy playing Ascension again on the app. Clank and Dune Imperium, I was going to be playing them at some point soon anyway. But yeah, I think I'm going to give Ascension another go. And yeah, let me know how you get on with Aeon's End Legacy.
I will, and I'm going to play Dune Imperium too.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's worth getting.
Excellent. Right. Well, thank you very much for giving up your morning to appear on this and for your contribution.
Thank you, Paul. It was a lot of fun.
And I will speak to you soon.
Okay. I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you very much. So there we go. That's the end of the video. I hope you found it entertaining and useful. Top 10 deck building games, even if you didn't think some of those were deck building games. But, that's just how it is. Please leave me some comments. Let me know what games you think should have been on the list or which games you don't think should have been on the list. And tell me why your favourite deck building game is your favourite deck building game. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. And as I mentioned at the start, this video has only been made possible thanks to the support of my Patreon page. So if you do like the content that I create and you are in a position to be able to support me, please check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/gaming rules. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.